You're here to watch a new video, but don't rush. Pause for a moment. Yes, right now. Look around you, in front of you, behind you, to your left, to your right. Look up, look down. You see everything, don't you? But what if I told you that you're not really seeing anything at all? What if I told you that you can only perceive a tiny fraction of this world? Right now, this very second, another world could be existing beside you, another place, another reality, yet you will never see it. Why? Because your brain, your eyes, your entire perception is built to grasp only 3 dimensions. For thousands of years, humans have been thinking about higher dimensions. Mathematicians calculate them. Physicists claim they exist, yet no one can see them. No one. In this video, I'm going to tell you why. And believe me, the answer will shock you. If topics like this make you think, if you want to push the boundaries of reality together, subscribe to the channel now and like this video, because here, we don't just watch, we try to see. Let's start with the simplest place. What is a dimension? A dimension is the number of directions in which you can move. In other words, it's the limit of your freedom. Imagine that you are a tiny point, a single point. You have no width, no height, no depth. You simply exist, but you cannot go anywhere because there is no direction to go. This is 0 dimensions, complete stillness, total immobility. You exist, but there is no movement. Now, let's stretch this point in one direction. A line is formed. You now live on the line. This is the first dimension. You can move forward, you can move backward, but you can do nothing else. There is no concept of left or right. Up and down do not exist, because in your world, those directions don't exist. You can't even imagine them. Your experience has never shown you such things. Now, let's extend that line in another direction. Say, upward. A surface is formed, a flat plane. This is the second dimension. Now you can move forward and backward, up and down. Your world has expanded, your freedom has increased, but you are still limited. There is no depth. Imagine that you are a flat being living on a sheet of paper. The paper is your entire universe. If someone moves their finger across the paper, you would only see a line or a circle. You would never understand the existence of a being looking from above, because in your world, the concept of up doesn't exist. Now, let's lift that surface in a third direction. Depth is added. Here it is, the third dimension. Length, width, height, the world we live in. We can move freely, forward and backward, left and right, up and down. Objects have volume. We can move around them. Everything looks normal and complete to us because our brains have evolved to perceive these 3 dimensions. But here a question arises. Just as the second dimension is unimaginable to a one-dimensional being, and the third dimension is inconceivable to a two-dimensional being, how would the fourth dimension appear to us? If a fourth dimension exists, if a fifth exists, even a 10th, perhaps we're like that being living on the paper. We wander on our surface saying, this is all of reality, but we deny the higher direction simply because we cannot see it. The real question is, do these dimensions not exist, or were we just not made to perceive them? Here's the point. Your brain was formed millions of years ago to live in a 3-dimensional world. Think about what our ancestors needed. They had to climb trees to find fruit, escape predators, throw stones. 3 dimensions were enough for all of that. Nature didn't give us the ability to see higher dimensions because there was no need. Imagine trying to explain flying to a fish. The fish lives its entire life underwater. For it, the concept of going up exists, but flying in the air does not. In the same way, we live in a 3-dimensional aquarium and cannot imagine the 4th dimension. But let's think for a moment. If a being from the 4th dimension looked into our world, what would it see? It could see every organ in your body at the same time. It wouldn't need to open a door to look inside a closed room. It would simply look from another direction, a direction that doesn't exist for us.
Terrifying, isn't it? But it's true. Mathematicians have proven it. And the most fascinating part is this. Some physicists believe that higher dimensions really do exist. They are right here, all around us, yet we cannot see them. Let's try to imagine this a little more clearly, a little more vividly.
Imagine you have a cube in your hand, a simple cube. You place it on a table and shine a light on it from one side. A shadow appears on the wall, but that shadow is not three-dimensional. It is only two-dimensional, a flat shape. It has no depth. In fact, what you see on the wall is not the cube itself. It's a simplified projection of it. Now slowly start rotating the cube. The shadow changes too. For a moment, it looks like a square. Then it stretches and resembles a rectangle. Sometimes the edges shorten, sometimes they stretch. From certain angles, it might even appear as a completely different shape. But despite all these changes, the real object doesn't change. It is still the same cube, only its shadow changes. Now imagine a two-dimensional being living on a wall. It can only see shadows. For it, reality is nothing more than that flat surface. It can never see the depth of a cube. It can never fully understand what the three-dimensional shape in your hand actually is. It would simply watch strange, shifting forms and say, "Why does this object keep changing its shape?" Yet the object itself isn't changing. It's just an image descending from a higher dimension into a lower one. The same thing may be happening to us. We live in a three-dimensional world, and if a four-dimensional object exists, we wouldn't see the object itself, only its three-dimensional shadow. For example, in mathematics, there is a concept called a tesseract, which is described as a four-dimensional cube. Mathematicians can express it with formulas, build models of it, and even show it through animations. But if a real four-dimensional object suddenly appeared before our eyes, we wouldn't perceive it as a stable shape. It would look like a strangely shifting structure, as if it were constantly transforming on its own.
And this is where the main difficulty begins. Our brains and our language have evolved to fit three dimensions. Even the way we describe directions reflects this. Right, left, forward, backward, up, and down. All of these only make sense within three dimensions. But imagine someone tells you, now take a step in the fourth direction. What would that even mean? Which way would you go? We don't even have a word for such a direction because we've never experienced it in practice. Let's think of it more simply. If you tried to explain the concept of up to a two-dimensional being, it wouldn't be able to accept it. In its world, there are only right and left, forward and backward. Up exists outside its reality. No matter how much you try to explain it, it could only imagine it, never truly experience it. In the same way, perhaps we are like that two-dimensional being when faced with higher dimensions. We only see shadows. We observe changing forms, but we cannot grasp the full structure that lies behind them. And perhaps the most intriguing question is this: could it be that even now we are merely watching the shadow of a higher reality? But the issue isn't just the limits of our imagination. The problem runs deeper. Our physical bodies themselves are also programmed to function within three dimensions. Let's start with a simple question. How do our eyes work? Our eyes receive light. Light falls onto the retina, signals are sent to the brain, and the brain constructs a three-dimensional image from that information. In other words, we don't actually see the world directly. We see a model built by our brain. And that model is designed for a reality with width, height, and depth. Now imagine that there is a signal coming from a fourth dimension. If such a thing exists, could our eyes even detect it?
The retina is adapted only to process light information that belongs to three-dimensional space. Even if an influence were coming from a fourth-dimensional direction, we have no sensor capable of reading it. If we can't see it, the brain doesn't recognize it as part of reality. And in human psychology, what cannot be perceived is often treated as if it doesn't exist. The same logic applies to our sense of touch as well. Our hands can only make contact with three-dimensional surfaces. We can feel an object's hardness, temperature, and shape, but all of this happens within 3 dimensions. If a 4-dimensional object were to pass by us, how would we feel it? Perhaps not at all, because our touch receptors are designed for 3-dimensional contact. A movement occurring in a fourth direction might not even register as contact to us. This brings us back to the example of a being in a 2-dimensional world. If you were to insert your 3-dimensional hand into its world, it would see only cross-sections, shapes that suddenly appear and then disappear. It would never be able to grasp the full wholeness of your hand. In the same way, when we encounter higher dimensional realities, perhaps we only perceive sliced effects that we cannot fully explain. What's interesting is that some physicists suggest higher dimensions might truly exist. For example, certain theories propose that extra dimensions are curled up and hidden at extremely tiny scales, so small that they only appear at the level of the Planck length. This scale is unimaginably small. Even the most powerful microscopes cannot observe it directly.
Other approaches, however, think differently. According to them, higher dimensions aren't just tiny, they may exist within an entirely different structure, perhaps in parallel directions, perhaps beyond our very concept of space and time. The problem isn't that they don't exist, but that we have no way to access them. And this leads to a deeply thought-provoking idea. Perhaps reality is far more vast than what we can perceive. It may simply be that our bodies and our senses are not designed to fully receive it.
Saying that the world outside the water doesn't exist just because a fish can't see it would hardly make sense. In the same way, it's just as questionable for us to deny the existence of other dimensions simply because we can only perceive 3. So the real question is this: are we truly experiencing all of reality, or only a 3-dimensional fragment of it? Now let me tell you something even more fascinating. One of the most popular theories in modern physics is string theory. According to this theory, the universe may exist in 10 or even 11 dimensions. Yes, you heard that right, 11 dimensions. We can perceive only 3 of them, so where are the other 8? String theory suggests that subatomic particles are not actually point-like dots, but tiny vibrating strings. These strings vibrate in higher dimensions, and each pattern of vibration produces a different particle, an electron, a quark, a photon, and so on. But these higher dimensions are thought to be curled up to incredibly small scales, which is why we can't see them. Imagine a long pipe. From far away, it looks like a one-dimensional line, but if an ant walks on it, it would notice a second dimension. It could move around the pipe's circumference. We may be in a similar situation. Higher dimensions could be so tiny that our large, coarse senses simply cannot detect them. If this is true, it would mean we may never directly see the universe's true structure. We live inside our 3-dimensional home, while the full picture remains hidden from us. So here's the answer to the question, why can't we see higher dimensions? First, your brain is wired to process only 3 dimensions. Evolution never gave us the ability to perceive a fourth spatial direction because we didn't need it to survive. Second, your physical body, your eyes, your skin, all your senses can interact only with 3-dimensional objects. Third, higher dimensions may either be so small that we physically cannot observe them, or they may exist in an entirely different layer of reality. And perhaps the most intriguing question of all is this: if one day we develop technology that allows us to perceive higher dimensions,
what would we actually see? How different would reality turn out to be? Perhaps one day we will learn. But for now, we are like fish trapped in a small aquarium, never able to see the endless sky above our heads. So think about this. Right now, at this very second, what might be happening around you that you will never be able to see? What hidden worlds could exist all around you? The answer might be shocking, yet the truth may simply be this: we may never know.